What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason and Joe here. Today, we are reviewing a record that was submitted to us by one of our patrons. We are talking about the Cowboy Junkies Trinity Sessions from 1988. It is their second album, influenced by music that they heard in the southern US on their first tour when they were touring around for their previous record. I've definitely heard this record at some point in the past. Definitely know Sweet Jane very well. That's probably the most well-known song from this album and probably from the Cowboy Junkies generally. Yeah, I've listened to some of their other records too as they've come out and stuff, so I would call myself a casual fan of theirs.
Well, I've heard Sweet Jane, and that's all. Used to play it on the X here in Pittsburgh, and I didn't care for it too much. I thought it was real hipster, kind of lame, and I didn't think this is what they sounded like. Kind of an interesting band. The first album was like all covers. I think they only had one original on it, and that this was their second album is pretty cool, actually.
All right, so we get into the songwriting first. Like their debut, it is a mix of originals and covers, but the ratio is adjusted quite a bit, so it's closer to like half and half-ish, I think. I think the quality of the writing for myself varies on this record. I think something like Misguided Angel is really strong, really good original. But there's also tunes like I Don't Get It, though, that I think are way less interesting. That one's kind of like a moody piece, slow, bluesy. I don't know, something about like the the beauty of their sound and how like pretty Margot Timmons' voice is like doesn't entirely work with like doing a down and dirty like grimy slow blues tune. It kind of, I don't know, it doesn't work that well for me. To Love Is to Bury I think is a stronger, another stronger one, though. Some nice pedal steel on that one. I think of the covers, most of them are okay. Sweet Jane, yeah, I don't know, I'm a little divided on it. I don't love it, and as far as like notable versions of that song go, theirs might be my least favorite. I'm a fan of the song. I'm not crazy about how they do it. But I really like their version of I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. I think that's great. Their version of Walking After Midnight, it's okay. Yeah, overall, I see it as an album with like some strong highlights, but I hardly think it's a stacked track list. I think it's really kind of hit or miss. And I think the pacing of it being so slow and so kind of like hushed and moody, it's a lot for an album.
Maybe it's expectations for this one, because I don't really agree. I think all the originals are pretty good. Really like the countryer tunes, I think are the best ones. Even though they record it in sort of a non-country way. Everyone just huddled around a single microphone in a big church in Toronto. Um, I was surprised by the energy. It was more like people made it people this sound like it was like a slow core, kind of like one of these newfangled hipster albums. And slow and monotonous and sort of like downcast the whole time. I didn't really get that from this. I thought the songwriting, it brings in that country blues, the spare country sound, the ghostly country sound. But there's more instrumentation than I thought, and I think the songwriting itself, something like Misguided Angel's great. They do a little jazzy stuff on Working on a Building, which is a cover, a little vampier vocal take on that. But I think, the country and the blues aspect, I think is pretty well balanced, a little jazz. Um, I like the instrumentation. They bring in a little more to liven things up. And I think the songwriting is just a little more nuanced than I usually go for. It's got, the very old-fashioned country sepia-toned lyrics and mood. I think it is, if I got like one big criticism is just that it is very samey, um, which, I mean, I think it establishes the mood well, but for 52 minutes, Maybe would have liked them to get the let out like a little bit more, a couple times, just to liven things up. It gets a little self-serious. Um, but if you told me that it was recorded around a single microphone in a church in like a day, I would have expected even sparser, even like ghostlier, even slower than what it, is. And I think the covers are all pretty great. I like the Blue Moon Revisited, which integrates Blue Moon into an original piece. The I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, I think is great. Um, Pretty much everything. I don't love the Sweet Jane. It's kind of a boring version of it. I don't, it's not my favorite song, but I think it's a pretty good song. It has very nice lyrics. But the way they do it is just sort of like too, I don't know, alternative 90s, kind of like, we're not really going to try with this song. We're just going to repeat it as it was without adding really anything to it. So not my favorite Sweet Jane, but I think the songwriting pretty darn good overall.
The musicianship, I think they're all good players. Not really one of the issues with the record. Margot Timmons has a lovely voice. I think the playing is all really understated and tasteful, maybe to the point of detriment, actually. It's so understated, and it's hard to there's like nothing grabbing your interest as you go through. It just kind of it gets a little drony and a little samey, like you said. It could use maybe like a more raucous solo here or there, or like a guitar tone even that just has a little more grit to it that kind of jumps out. And it's kind of, I mean, that's difficult to kind of massage a mix like that and have things kind of like build and swell when you're recording with one mic. So it's part of the way it was recorded is just kind of is what it is. But yeah, over 52 minutes, I think it does get a little boring.
Yeah, like I like the playing. It was more than I expected coming in. So again, maybe the expectation for something really sparse and kind of slow and boring. When they would bring in the pedal steel and the dobro and the mandolin and the harmonica and the fiddle and stuff, um, they it caught me by surprise, and I really liked it. So I don't know if I would listen to it again without the surprise, maybe it wouldn't hit as much. But what they do, I think, is really good. The subtlety, the pedal steel is real nice on a couple of tracks. I think everything's, made and played to accentuate Margot Timmons's voice. It's really nice, country brushed vocal style. I guess the limits, again, the constraints of the recording never let her like go all out. And like she'll get to like a point in like her power level and just kind of hit the roof. And she could go, much harder and stronger, but it kind of just limits it. And yeah, over 52 minutes. I think if this was like as a 35-minute album, I think it would be perfect because the mood would be established. And I don't think you'd really care if they, didn't go all out and wasn't a hard rocking song or anything. But when you stretch into the 52 minutes, then you kind of start to notice that, hey, maybe this does all kind of sound the same. Uh, yeah, I don't know why they recorded it in a church. Maybe just they didn't have any money. I think they lied about it they lied to the church itself to get in there. They said they were going to do something religious. Of course, they didn't at all.
Like
This isn't religious.
they said they were the Timmons family singers.
Yeah. So I guess for one microphone in a church in one day illegally, it's pretty impressive. So I can't, say too much bad stuff about the playing.
Production, we've already touched upon it. It was recorded with one microphone in a day. For considering that, I mean, it sounds great. I think it's, yeah, an example of, using your limitations and finding, you know, creativity in that. And it sounds good. It doesn't sound like it was recorded with one mic. It was a stereo mic, so you do get some separation. There's some um, sound stage. You can tell certain things are left or right. But yeah, it was. sounds really good, and it's also just like the performances being live and like full takes, I think adds something to it too, which I think, yeah, that's my favorite kind of record.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to tell it was recorded with one mic and live one take or whatever it was. I think it was like one overdub on the vocals on the whole thing. So that's really impressive. The fact that they got all everybody in there, and you can kind of tell maybe that like the levels aren't perfect as far as like what you might want to hear. Like the guitar is a little lower, and you can kind of hear it a little more in the background than maybe you would expect. But again, just the constraints of a single mic in a church. I think they do a really good job not making it sound like a single mic in a church and really kind of lo-fi and dinky. Like it sounds good, and that's pretty darn impressive.
Best and worst track. The best for me is To Love Is to Bury. That's the one with the pedal steel. I agree with you. I think the more country tunes are the better tunes on the record. So yeah, that's my favorite. And my least favorite is I Don't Get It, which is the bluesy like harmonica one, which it
Just don't
just
get it. You don't
I don't
get
think
it.
it really fits the mood of all the other tracks, and yeah, it doesn't work for me.
My favorite is To Love Is to Bury as well. Pedal steel for the win. And then the cover of I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, I think also deserves a mention. Is the best cover song. And the worst, I don't know, maybe Sweet Jane, just because I don't know, it's weird to hear it. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the songs. It's from a different era, I guess. So I just don't dig it.
Final score on it. It's a 3.5 for me. I think it's good. I like it. I like it enough to have checked out other records of theirs, but I don't like it enough to have ever become a huge fan.
I like it enough to get to 4 stars. I think it's pretty darn good. 1988. Like I just know if I was doing a deep dive of 1988, I think this would be different enough to make it really stand out. And the country rock tinge, the folkiness. I think it's got a cool sound, well played, like her voice, good songs. Yeah, it's definitely a 4 star work for me.
All right. Well, let us know what you think of the record. If you've heard it, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check the video description for links to our Patreon. You can check us out over there. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.